So we are actually the only innovation organization in the Department of War that has ties to acquisition, soldiers, and requirements documents. And that is incredibly powerful.
I am super honored to have you back.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, we had some glitches, which is okay. It happens.
Dress rehearsal.
But rehearsals. I love how you said that.
Exactly.
So for the audience, tell us about you.
Sure. So my name is Dr. Casey Perley. I'm the director of Army Applications Lab. Army Applications Lab mission is to get the best technology in the hands of warfighters as quickly as possible. There's a whole host of people in the Army who share that mission. Our niche in the space is that we do that by expanding the Army's access to our civil innovation base, specifically non-traditional industry. It's probably not news to your listeners why this is important. We all know that the innovative potential of the US and our allies is a strategic advantage over near-peer competitors. But what really strikes me is that 60 years ago, 2/3 of all R&D spending in this country was government funded. Today, it is 20% and continuing to fall. And defense budgets have remained relatively static, but our wish list of capabilities is going up as we learn lessons from the wars in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So the government can't afford to buy everything from scratch or like build everything from scratch, even if we wanted to. Yeah. We have to leverage commercial R&D, and that is what we do at AAL.
Okay, let's go back in time. Both about you. I want the listeners to know the power of you, fair. Casey, but also the. Do
you want me to move the mic?
I was thinking, if we could. I think we need to lower it.
Okay, I can do that all again. I can do that in my sleep. No, literally, you could wake me up at 3 a.m. and be like, "All right, AAL, I got it."
Down, more like that.
Okay, I can go with that.
Same thing with you. Maybe bring it down a little bit. Thanks for doing that, Casey. I don't want to interrupt, but I think that's the right.
Yeah, you can do that. We can start again.
Yeah, that'll show.
Okay. Casey, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Hang on. 3, 2, 1. You want me to wave so we can see it? Okay, here we go. Casey, welcome back to the Texas Embassy podcast. Although for our audience, they won't see you the first version.
We did a dress rehearsal.
We did a dress rehearsal.
Tech
Excellent.
Issues.
Casey, I'd love for the audience members to know you.
Okay. So I am the director of the Army Applications Lab. For your listeners who aren't familiar with us, we are Transformation and Training Command's innovation organization. Our mission is to get the best technology in the hands of warfighters as quickly as possible. And while there's a whole host of people across the Army who share that mission, AAL's niche in that space is that we do that by improving the Army's access to our civil innovation base and non-traditional industry. It's not news to your listeners that this is important. Everybody knows that one of the big strengths of the US and our allies is the innovative potential of our industry compared to near-peer competitors. But what I think a lot of people don't know is that 60 years ago, 2/3 of all R&D spending in this country was government funded. Today, that is 20% and continuing to fall percentage-wise. With defense budgets remaining relatively static with respect to inflation, but our wish list of capabilities ever increasing because of lessons we're taking from the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, government can't afford to develop all the capabilities from scratch even if we wanted to. So we've got to figure out how to leverage commercial industry. Now me, how do I fit in that? This is not a natural career opportunity. Like if you'd asked 20-year-old Casey if she'd ever be the AAL director, she'd be like, what is that? But my background is this. I have a PhD in microbiology, and I spent about a decade in biodefense. So think outbreak, think contagion. I worked with hemorrhagic fever viruses in biosafety level 4. I wore the spacesuits. And while I was there, I watched some clinical trials maybe not go the way we hoped. And I just decided I wanted a little more diversity in my science. I don't want to spend, 3 decades of my life working on one thing and then it fails at the last possible moment. I was moving to Texas about 7-8 years ago because my husband is a soldier and he was taking command of a battalion at Fort Hood.
Where are you originally from?
I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York.
Grew up in Buffalo and then lived in Connecticut, Massachusetts, North Carolina, just outside Washington, D.C. Before moving to Texas. So really right along that, East Coast, New England area.
Where the wicked smart people are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had more of a Midwestern accent than Boston, but nonetheless.
Very cool.
Moved down here, called up AAL, which was in its infancy because Army Futures Command had just stood up. And Army Applications Lab was one of the 3 new things that stood up as part of AFC. The rest was just kind of merging in. And I said, I hear you guys are hiring scientists. And they said, we're hiring engineers. And I said, totally valid point. However, if you ever want to experiment on soldiers, you're going to need somebody that knows how to do ethics approvals. And you're not going to find an engineer that knows how to do that. But I have run those for clinical trials. I know what I'm doing. And they said, valid point, you're hired. And 5 years and 5 jobs later, I became the director.
You worked your way up.
I worked my way
ground
up.
level. That's awesome.
I started as our deputy tech director, became tech director, then led insights and analysis, then was our deputy. And 8 months after becoming deputy with a 14-month-old, I became the director.
There's so much to unpack there, right? I mean, 1, you're an Army spouse.
I am.
2, you're an expert in your field. 3, the hustle of finding the opportunity. Yes. I mean, those are all individual podcasts that I know that would gravitate towards so many people that you kind of controlled your destiny. That's amazing.
So I was really fortunate enough to speak. Texas did a women's leadership conference hosted by the First Lady of Texas a couple weeks ago. And I was really fortunate enough to be asked to speak.
It's amazing.
And I shared that story, the story of AAL originally being like, I'm not sure you're what I'm looking for. So often women look at job descriptions and they say, I don't check 100% of the boxes, so I'm not going to apply. There's actually some HBR studies, Harvard Business Review, on this fact. I am living proof that even, regardless of your gender, if you don't meet every, tick box on an application, you should apply anyways.
100%.
Because you might have this niche skill set that they don't realize they're looking for, and you would be perfect for the role.
Yeah, or even unveiling to them the possibilities that they're not even considering.
Hey, you guys ever considered? Yeah, so I was the second civilian ever hired at AAL.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's amazing. And so the story of you, when the original mission of AAL came in and you joined it, how has that mission evolved?
So the mission itself hasn't changed too much. We were always there to be like the Army's accelerator program. How do we rapidly pivot commercial capabilities into the DoD? Exactly how we've done that, I think, has evolved. If you asked Casey 7 years ago, I thought, we'll just make a couple playbooks for how you transition capability. When we start every project, we'll just pick the right playbook and boom, problem solved. AAL, we've transitioned about half of our completed projects. We've transitioned 51%, okay?
Wow.
And the way we define transition is the government or our allies continues to use the capability when our project is done. So that can look like transitioning to NATO or an allied partner. That can look like foreign military sales to Ukraine. That can look like going to our programs of record, going directly to units, going to a sister service, transitioning as a subcontractor with industry, going to our labs for more development. But I just gave you 8 ways you could transition.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody's done it the same way twice. So I think to me that is one of the biggest ways we've evolved, is we've evolved from this mentality of it's going to be easy to everything is bespoke and special and we can't do it the same way twice. The other thing I think that's really evolved is how we integrate these companies with the warfighter. Our business model has always been, we're going to assemble the team of stakeholders you need from the front. Mm-hmm. Who's the requirements writer? Because in order to be procured by the Army, get that coveted proc dollar contract, you need a valid requirement.
Right.
So who are the requirements writers? Who is that transition partner that's going to buy you at the end of the day? Who are the labs and centers that have the relevant expertise, right? Do we need to bring in a sister service? Hey, Marines especially, are you interested? Oh, it's a tank? Guess we're going it alone. But it's really been now end users. So when you look at corporate tech development, commercial tech development, what is one of the first things startups do? They go find their customers and they ask them lots of questions. Mm-hmm. They probably give them a beta version and get feedback, and they iterate. When you look at the war in Ukraine, they're doing the same thing. Companies are embedding with units, and they're iterating in weeks to days, not months to years. So we now embed companies with units and give them that level of access. So here's an example of what this looks like. In 2024, we started to do some work for our engineer community. Some of the riskiest things we ask our soldiers to do are breach minefields and bridge rivers, but we didn't tackle that problem right away. When you think about breaching minefields, like you've got to get really close to that minefield today. Launch the breach charge. With the rise of unmanned aerial systems and first-person view drones, that is unsurvivable, right? And we don't want to ever trade blood for first contact ever again, to borrow one of General Rainey's sayings. So we ultimately put, I think, 13 companies on contract to solve that breaching problem and that terrain shaping problem. They spent 3 months working with the 20th Engineer Brigade out of 18th Airborne Corps at Fort Bragg, walking their training areas, talking to soldiers, understanding how we do the breach now. And at the end of those 3 months, they gave an outbrief to the engineer community on how their tech could be used or modified to either help a breach or help shape terrain very, very far in front of the forward line of troops. We ultimately brought on 7 companies. 3 more joined through other mechanisms. So we ended up with a cohort of 10. 5 months after their contract, they were out in the dirt at Fort Leonard Wood for over a week with soldiers from 20th Engineers, 555th Engineers, and 36 Engineers. And we didn't say to them, thou shalt use this unmanned ground vehicle for breaching. Thou shalt use this low-cost drone for terrain shaping. We said, this is an unmanned ground vehicle. Here's how you use it. Okay. Here's a low-cost drone. Here's what it can do. Okay, now that you know what this capability can do, your first mission is to breach a minefield and do a movement to contact. Go. And they're sitting there and they're looking at their normal kit and they're looking at this and they go, well, what if I took this and put it on that? All right, sure, let's get out the zip ties, let's get out the duct tape. And then when it doesn't work, we go, okay, pull back, try again. That level of iteration with companies is like a gold mine. But when you look at it from an Army perspective, we're now not just experimenting with technology. We're thinking about how do we organize?
That's right.
Do we change our doctrine? What are the implications on training now?
What you're describing is what this acronym is,
Yes.
DOTMLPF.
Yes.
Why don't you let the audience know what that means?
So it's a very long acronym. D stands for doctrine, right? That's essentially how do we fight?
Right.
O is for organization. Do I need to change my force structure based on how this could work? T is training, right? M is material. That's the thing. P is personnel, right? F is facilities. P is policy. So these are all the things that kind of wrap around a capability for the Army. So often when we think of capability, we think it's material alone. It's not. That experiment went so well. And those companies like slept in the field. It was eye-opening for them. General Beck, who leads our Maneuver Support Center of Excellence, called down to General Admiral at Fort Hood and said, at no cost to you, can these guys embed with 36 engineers for the next 9 to 10 months and be a part of your platoon validation exercises in March? And he said, yes. So those companies came on down. One of them has since fallen off, and that's okay. We're not going to ask a unit to use capability that doesn't work.
Right.
And we don't expect every capability to make it through.
Absolutely.
So actually the first 2 weeks of March, they're going to be out there now with 36 engineers, part of their collective training cycle. And after that, we're going to down select and see what capabilities are going to stay with the unit to go to National Training Center.
Casey, I love that you describe that activity because it's fundamentally what I'm seeing, from my past in life is that, yes, we're opening up the doors and we want to be able to do the customer discovery with new capabilities that come in. I love that. However,
yes,
when we look at the demand of the Army and what you represent, you're at the cross-section of the community and all of the things to unpack to make that evolution occur. But from a startup's perspective, sometimes that could be a bad thing to talk to the Army, to talk to the military. Because even though it's very exciting, it comes at a cost, right? No, not even intimidating. It's the possibilities, right? I'm curious as to, you've seen the good and the bad, and how does a company sustain that that journey. That's what I'm really, what successes have you seen to continue to be there, to go to engage that? Because somebody has to fund that opportunity.
Exactly. So I'm going to say a couple of things. First is, I know the Department of War has a reputation for killing companies. I would argue that's not exactly what
That's
happens.
scary. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was
Come on.
That's
You've
new
heard
to
that.
me.
So here's what I think happens. Companies almost uniformly assume the government is going to buy more of their capability for more money faster than the government ever intended.
Yes.
And because we don't correct that assumption, perhaps because we don't know they have it, they base commercial go-to-market decisions, they make fundraising decisions predicated on a large check that is not coming on the timeline or for the amount they think it is. And then when it doesn't materialize, unless they have commercial revenue or deep venture backing, they cannot weather that.
Absolutely.
And the company folds.
Absolutely.
So while I absolutely agree we need to get to procurement buys faster, I think the other thing we have to do is be really transparent with early stage companies.
Love that.
About what is the return on investment for working with the Army.
Absolutely.
It could be, here's the rough fielding timeline. Or it could be, you are pre-requirement. The good news is you can shape the ultimate capability the Army buys. The bad news is you are not in the budget yet. And you need a plan for what that could look like. So that is one thing that we really do with all our companies, is we are that blunt, okay? I think another reason it can be really intimidating for companies to work with the Army is, even if you have that information, is what are you going to do with my capability?
Right.
Am I going to lose control over this? And I think that is actually one of the real benefits of working with soldiers. We're not guessing how soldiers are going to use it. We're showing them. And then if that becomes uncomfortable for the company, they have an off-ramp, right? And I think that's really important.
It's the knowledge itself for the journey, right? I think that you guys, in a way, what I've seen is you're a great Sherpa, as you described.
That's exactly what we do.
Uh,
And let me give you an example of a journey one of our companies have taken. So the Army has this program called the Holistic Health and Fitness Program, H2F. It's how do we monitor the health of our soldiers? But it's not just like the physical performance health. It's spiritual, it's cognitive, it's are you sleeping right, it's are you eating right? And if you look at that from a commercial perspective, who else does that? Professional sports teams. So we got asked, can you pivot commercial athlete management software into the DoD? So we put out a solicitation to do this. And we got back the apps that are used by pro football and pro NBA and pro soccer teams, which is great. And we gave them $500,000 for 6 months. But we said, you're not going one place. Each of the 3 companies spent 2 months with the 82nd Airborne, who loves physical fitness in a way that maybe other Army units do not. They spent 2 months at Fort Gordon with the 513th Military Intelligence Brigade, who likes physical fitness, just a little bit less. And then they spent 2 months with the AIT unit at Joint Base San Antonio, the medics, who I think liked PT even less than the MI guys. And they went round robin. And at the end of the day, we asked the units, which one did you like? And luckily, they all liked the same one, right? Because we were a little concerned, like, is the 82nd going to prefer one because they're super into PT and they've got jump injuries and they've got unique needs. But no, they all liked the same one. So we put that company on a SBIR Phase 2 contract, about $2 million. And we said, you're going to stay embedded with 2 of the units and you're going to, make all these improvements. Okay, so you went from small contract to slightly larger, but still not game-changing contract.
right.
When they were done with us, they got put on about $4 million contract. All right, not SBIR dollars, real RDT&E money, to spend another year, get your ATO, do your load tests, all the things.
And the ATO process is the authority to operate. It's more of the connecting to the matrix.
Right, exactly.
The certificate.
They just got another $3.5 million contract to go to 8 brigades. So this is an example of where they're working along. Every year, they're moving to that next step. Right. And if you look at it, that company's now made, because they also got some work with the Navy out of this, about $12 million, right? From that early stage thing. Now, where does this go in the Army? I think the Army's got some choices over the next year, and I'm really intrigued to see what decisions
Was that company, not to call them out specifically, but what was their initial?
They're a very small business.
A very small business. Were they raising capital?
That's a great question.
Where did they get their internal resources from?
Great question. They did have some existing commercial clients.
Okay.
Right. They had pro sports teams, high school sport teams. Ironically, my old high school was one of their clients. Wow. I did not learn that until after the fact.
That's a cool story.
Which is kind of a cool story.
Yeah.
When I met them in person, that was one of the first things I told them.
Nice.
I don't know if that particular company has venture backing. About 40% of the 200 plus companies in AAL's portfolio has raised some form of money, whether that's angel seed investment, whether that's venture capital, whether that's private equity, whether they've crowdfunded an equity raise. It's about 40% of our companies.
What I love is that you know that.
Yes.
Because when I left the military, it was very much, these innovative ecosystems needs to learn about the growth of a young startup and the vernacular and the process. And so the fact that you know that as a front door even to the Army to then, yes, I like but we can facilitate these experiments, as you said, right? The possibilities of funding.
And
you need to know what's going on the other side.
And we really engage with the venture capital community. So we have a network of about 250 VC firms that are either interested in an area we work, like say power and energy or human performance, or they're interested in dual use or defense tech. And if any of our companies are raising, we will send details of that raise out to that network. And that has led to due diligence and investments, which is fantastic.
You have. I'll speak firsthand to that. We're on that distribution list. Yeah.
Our companies have raised $3.5 billion since their first AAL contract.
Wow.
Which is $12.
Wait, say that again.
$3.53 billion.
Billions with
a B. And that's $12.50 of private money for every dollar of government money I have spent, which is crazy. And I think it also goes to show the value of working in this type of model, getting access to the stakeholders, getting access to the end users. Now, the next thing we've got to work on, and I know the Army is really pushing towards this, is okay, you've gone to the field. You've had a really successful experiment. Like, for reference, we have 43 capabilities right now with units, whether that is extended experimentation or they've transitioned, they're there full time. You're there for experimentation, you work. How do we then get you the $5, $10, $20 million tranche buy, right? There are some cultural barriers in the Army we need to break. There's some fiscal barriers in terms of how we move money, how we conceive of how we use certain types of money. I'm really enthusiastic about the way the Army has reorganized our portfolio executives into this new structure called PAEs. I'm really excited about this new organization called the PIT, which is the Pathway for Innovative Technology, that's really designed to help get that $5, $10, $20 million buy. But I think one of the challenges for the Army is historically the way our acquisition system has worked is we want to wait till all the competitors are ready. Everybody's as a level playing field, so we ensure we're getting the best. But when you're working with venture-backed companies, the timelines for them are not stackable, right? Depending on when they raised, who they raised, how much from, they may need to fundamentally move on different timelines. And the Army may have to be willing to do small buys from multiple vendors at multiple different points versus waiting 2 years and running the big program of record. And I think those are things we need to think through as an Army and figure out how we're going to adjust to, because it's just reality if we're working with these VC-backed companies.
I was on a call yesterday we're with a VC that talks about, and they're always doing a comparison, right? I mean, there's some darlings out there in the ecosystem, the Saronics, and so they do this compare and contrast. Hey, how come we're not getting that done? Saronic did that. How do we do that? What makes us different?
Yeah.
But to your point, they executed in a snapshot of time. And what we're seeing here and what you're describing is the board itself in this game of chess is moving and changing.
It is.
And sometimes that comes with a lag. How can you get in front of it from a lead? So it's tough.
It is. And so one of the things we're seeing a lot of is companies are saying, how can I become the next neoprime? And they're looking at some of the companies you mentioned, Saronic, Anduril is another one, and they're saying, how did they do that? So we're seeing a lot more companies interested in congressional ads now. And I've actually had feedback from staffers about like, why are there so many more companies coming asking about ads or hiring lobbyists to get ads? And the answer is they're looking at Anduril, and that's kind of how Anduril did it. So they're thinking that's a pathway for me. Every year, AAL releases our annual report. We do so in March at CapFac House.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, you should all come and hear me give the State of the Union address.
Here in Austin, Texas.
Here in Austin, Texas. But one of the things we're doing is part of that performance report, and our comms team is killing me over this graph I want. It's really the graphic of every company that we've had that's transitioned and what it has looked like for them. So that companies don't just have the Anduril map. They can see 18, 19 other ways. And they can see which of these companies am I most like? What did their pathway look like? Am I on track? Am I ahead of track? Am I maybe behind? Maybe I can ask some more informed questions. That is a huge data lift. That is a huge data visualization lift, which I think is why no other innovation organization has published it for them. But it's something we're really committed to doing because I know it is the most asked for piece of data I get from young companies. How do I know if I'm on track? How do these other companies do it? So we're putting out there how our companies, anonymized so you don't know their names, have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, every journey is different. Right?
It is.
Just like the answer, when we learn in the acquisition process, it depends. That was like your response to any question you have. Well, it depends. Exactly. And that's absolutely the reality. And I think that that's what's great about your organization because you are the ones that ingest the patterns of successes and find the matches that most befitting to that individual company, understanding their finances, where they're at from a maturity standpoint, and the maturity of the material, the team, the entirety of to go through the journey of AEL.
Exactly.
You guys are that one-stop shop to start the conversation.
Exactly.
I think that what our listeners will want to also know about is how you connect to the broader community. So you've internalized that. I mean, you have your internal Rolodex, and that's amazing. But how does not just the startup connect to you? Who are you looking for the community of support?
So within the Army, we are part of Transformation and Training Command, which is located here in Austin, Texas. And that is incredibly powerful because under T2Com, we have this group called the Combined Arms Command. They're responsible for all of our training center rotations. They're responsible for that .mil PFP acronym we talked about, right? We've also got our Futures and Concept Center, which is all about how do we fight in the future that has requirements writers, that has our scientists. Okay, that's our parent organization. We are direct support to the PIT, which is on the acquisition side of the house. So we are actually the only innovation organization in the Department of War that has ties to acquisition, soldiers, and requirements documents. And that is incredibly powerful. Now, how do we fit in the ecosystem on the outside? We are not behind the wire at like Fort Hood or anywhere else. We are here in the center of Austin, Texas, which is super exciting. And companies can go to our webpage, aal.army, and you can join our network. Joining that network gets you the emails that say, hey, we've released a solicitation. Hey, do you want to sign up for office hours with our corporate team? Hey, we're going to be at this event. Come find us, right? You can also follow us on LinkedIn. If any of you've been on sam.gov. Okay. I was going to say, if any of your listeners have been on sam.gov, if I were to ask them what their user experience was, they'd probably laugh.
You know what? Just to pull the thread on sam.gov, when we meet with our companies and very similar to, I look at us as almost a privatized model of AAL, right? Where we're also an additional resource that says, hey, let us teach you the process, let us understand, let's find the signals. But for sam.gov, it is an intelligence tool. That's the initial view that we take with these guys. Is one, you need to familiarize with yourself with the platform.
Right.
It is very archaic and it's an analog. It is not.
But it's new. We just got off beta.sam.
Okay, that's probably an offline discussion, okay? But again, it's an intelligence tool to inform like what you just said. Is there a demand? Is there an opportunity? And is there money behind it?
Right, but we don't want companies to have to figure out how to navigate that.
Exactly.
So we use LinkedIn, we use Twitter.
Yes.
You can follow Army Applications Lab there, and you will get all of our solicitations, all of our opportunities.
And I like that. I think that you guys have gone outside of that model.
We have to.
You have to.
Because right now, if you're on sam.gov, it's because you're actively looking to do business with the Army. We want to find companies as they're going about their daily business who might not have thought that what they were building was relevant.
Right.
A great story I love to tell, in the very early days of AAL, we got asked to help build an autoloader for field artillery. And right now, your listeners might be thinking, Casey, I thought you worked with non-traditional companies. Building an autoloader for a weapon system sounds like the most traditional ask that you could make. But fundamentally, what is an autoloader? You're automating a process. And you know who's really good at automating processes? The guys that make the assembly line robots for Yoplait and Frito-Lay and oil rigs. So if I write I need an autoloader, they're not going to see themselves. But if I write I need to automate a process, and that process just happens to be inside a howitzer, they're going to say, I can do that. That's not that different than automating a process for Tesla.
Yeah.
And we got those companies, and they kicked butt.
Yeah, and you also need to have the community that says, okay, we're going to think a traditional, non-traditional route. To have a guy that worked at Frito-Lay thinking that he can come in and automate the autoload.
Here's another great story about that. So we also were working on a field artillery problem set of how do we resupply them faster in the field. So if your listeners don't know anything about field artillery, the way they work is they shoot, then they move. I like to say they scoot. They resupply on the scoot, and then they shoot again. If you can speed up the resupply, you will actually get to your second firing point and be able to fire sooner. So your rate of fire, your rate of rounds downrange actually increases, even though the gun itself is not firing faster. So we got asked, hey, can you speed up the resupply? And we put 6 companies on contract, and we took them to Fort Bliss. And it was like the one day a year that it rained at Fort Bliss, and the van got stuck in the mud, but they watched ammo handling paperwork, like literally disintegrate in the rain. They watched a supply sergeant back into his whiteboard and erase numbers. And we had 2 companies go up to the acquisition professional in charge of field artillery and the cross-functional team director and say, you know, you really have an inventory.
Was General Rafferty?
It was Rafferty. And he said, you know, you don't have a resupply problem. You have an inventory management problem. And if we can speed up your inventory management, if we can automate that through computer vision, you're probably going to save 30 to 40%, and you don't need an ant bot with a robot arm. And that was like earth-shattering, because we fundamentally haven't changed the way we use field artillery since like the Korean War. And none of them conceived that inventory management was a problem, because inventory management had always been done the same way. So they never conceived that it could be the problem.
That's a great point.
So we ended up putting 2 companies on contract. They did just that, came up with a computer vision way to do it, tied into the field artillery programs of record. And in 2023, it became an ACAT 4 program of record for the Army.
And that comes, that epiphany comes with getting out there in the sand.
And getting some companies that have never worked with field artillery to look at that and go, that's completely nuts. What are you doing? And that perspective is so incredibly important.
Since this is called the Texas Embassy Podcast, I want to really kind of lean into the state itself. And I recognize that you guys serve the United States. We do. But can you talk to the power of what Texas has provided to you guys in that way? So
if you look at where venture capital is deployed, Austin is in the top 10 cities in the US. And notably, it's number 2 in hardware, right? And a lot of what AAL particularly is working on right now is hardware focused. Yes, it's got software, because all hardware has software now. It does. But we do very little that is software by itself. We're also seeing, since AFC and now T2Com moved to Austin, a rise in the number of defense companies and specifically defense startups that are starting here in Austin. I mean, I could rattle off a list of 5, 10, 15, just in the little triangle between Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, Houston, right, that have popped up in the last 5 or 10 years. I think the Austin area is such an incredible defense ecosystem, not just because of the capital being deployed, not just because of all these great young companies, but we're also close to Fort Hood. Yeah. And then you're close to end users and testing. And there's nowhere else in the country that I think has that concentration. Research Triangle Park comes closest, but that's a lot more biotech than the hardware that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I was in the Pentagon when we were looking at evaluating the cities at large, and so the Triangle was on the
It was.
consideration for this.
I'm so excited we ended up here.
The fact that you were closest to the two largest Army installations in the world, I think is a huge value add. And the fact that we're central to the United States is another huge value add from a global standpoint. Because I just came back from Israel. I was there for an entire week. And very slowly, you know, we've been here in Texas. We know the power that is here and these offices. But I heard through random conversations, more so than I've had, Austin, and that this is the defense hub for innovation.
Yeah, like I said, we're seeing a ton of startups popping up in this area that have really cool, really innovative, think outside the box, no parallel in the inventory type capabilities. It's a really exciting place to be.
From a global standpoint, do you get global companies coming through there?
And we get consulates from allied nations coming through, trying to figure out how they can connect their top companies in with us. We do have international companies in our portfolio. So yes, I mean, there are certain countries that if you're based in, we cannot work together.
Yeah,
because you're an adversary.
Absolutely.
But if you're like a NATO ally, if you're one of our Indo-Pacific allies, one of our Middle Eastern allies, even if you're not a NATO, we can find ways to work together.
And the knowledge that you're giving is also, is it just on your processes or just the applications of the successes?
It's a great question. So one of the numbers we track is about how many contracts do companies that have worked with us go on to get after working with us. So even if you didn't transition with us, if your tech wasn't the right fit, have we taught you how to work with the DoD well enough that you can go on and get subsequent contracts where your tech might be a better fit? And it's an average for our companies that come to us with limited to no DoD experience, they're going to get about 4 contracts on average post us that don't include our follow-on contracts.
Wow.
Right? So we are teaching how do you work within the system. You know, we have companies that we're going to work with that have to submit 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 proposals because they just don't understand the level of depth we need. And we'll coach them through it, right? We have companies that don't know how to invoice their first payment. All right, let's get on a screen share, right?
You're going through that?
Yeah, we're going through that with them.
Wow. You have that kind of expertise
We do. Now, we can't write their proposal for them, but we can give them really detailed feedback on like where we need additional info and where we still need additional info.
As the coaching, that's the Sherpa.
Yeah, it's the coach and the mentor, yeah.
That's amazing. So how does the startup engage with you?
So go to our website, aal.army, join our network, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, come see us at CapFac House in March, I think March 13th, 14th, and 15th. We're doing open office hours. We've got great programming. Yeah.
And then how do the other stakeholders, like you said, whether you're a VC, let's say I have a warehouse that is in this location that does 3D printing, how would I be able to engage with you guys?
So once again, the same way. VCs join our network, they follow us. You'll have options to kind of click like what type of company you are, and we can flag you and tag you appropriately. We also have companies that engage with us that are like subcomponents. Like AEL will never invest in or buy a semiconductor. Like it's just too component level. But we keep a list of manufacturers so that when our companies come to us and say, my semiconductor supplier isn't going to work, we can say, we know of 4 companies. We're not endorsing any of them, but here are 4 companies that we know of that you should go contact. So even if you think like you're too niche of a capability or you're a manufacturing company or something, we would love you on our list because we'd love to connect you with companies that we're working with or even companies we know of that we're not working with, to advance the industrial base and the capabilities we're getting to our warfighter.
You're not the only innovative arm of the Department of War. There's the Navy. Do you work closely with
Absolutely.
those other services?
I think I'm talking to AFWorks on Tuesday. I talked to DIU yesterday, Defense Innovation Unit. One of the other great things about Austin is not only are we here, Defense Innovation Unit is here, AFWorks is here, the Navy, the Guards Innovation Arm, SOCOM, DARPA, the intelligence community, a whole host of others. And we all sit in the same building on the same floor. It's the only place in the country that we are all co-located. About 20% of AAL projects have co-investment from sister services. And that's because I'm not trying to pick up the phone and figure out who to call. It's because I'm walking across the hall and saying, hey, do you guys share the same problem? If you do, have you solved it? And it's really great when they say yes, because then I'm like, well, I don't need to spend money. What's your solution? I'm just taking that back to the Army, solve the problem faster and cheaper. But hey, if we all do have the same problem, do you want to do this together? Pool our money. Not only does it get us better capability, if you think about a contested fight in the Indo-Pacific, if us and the Air Force and the Marines are all using the same generator, the ability to repair it, the ability to move it is suddenly a lot easier than if we're using 3 different generators. So there's a whole lot of value when we can do that cross-service collaboration.
So I'm a startup and I make a widget and I want to come in and talk to you.
Great, we got a corporate team.
Do you have the knowledge of the problem sets across the Department of War or the Indo-Pacific, the COCOM regions?
Great question.
Like, how do I gain where the demand signal is?
So we will help connect you. I would love to publish a problem list that gets classified real quick.
Absolutely.
But yes, we can help connect you in.
Got it. So you'll be able to match
We're a connector.
internally, right?
We're a connector.
A connector. Okay. What help do you need from people?
Tell us about your capabilities. If you are an investor, tell us what you're interested in investing in, like type of checks you like to write. If you are a manufacturer or a subcomponent company, let us know what you got. And if you're interested in partnering and pairing, we just want to help build this great ecosystem that enables tech to get to our warfighters faster.
Casey, do you see this model that we're building here in Austin, that you have been at the foundational level, which I love that. I love that story because it's consistency and you've moved up. And I think that's what makes an organization great is that they don't lose that knowledge of where they've come from, where their mission is and where they want to go. But is this repeatable? Can this model go to Indiana? Can it go to Tennessee? Is that something that you're seeing that can be replicated?
I don't think we need to be geo-dispersed. I think one of the things we've learned from COVID is that like Zoom and Google Meets, insert any other platform you like, are a thing. And we have the ability to travel. So like, let's say we do an introductory call with you. We're really excited. Either you can travel to us with soldiers or we can travel to you and do a site visit. So I don't think AAL needs to be geographically dispersed in order to be effective. I know DIU's got its on-ramp hubs and there's a couple organizations, Apex accelerators are in a lot of places.
Yes.
And they're all great and fantastic. I do think our model is exportable within the Department of War, either inside the Army or to sister services. We also work really closely with our allied partners, some of the Nordic states, AUKUS, so Australia, UK, New Zealand, Canada, and have been trying to mentor some of them on like, here are our lessons learned, do not make the same mistakes we did.
Exactly.
Like if we can save you 6 months by not doing that, we want to. And those relationships have been incredibly fruitful, especially Australia and the UK and the Nordic countries.
I love your passion. I love the excitement. You guys have been doing great things. What's holding you back from doing more? Like, what bothers you? What keeps you up at night? Yeah, that standard answer.
There's a couple of projects.
Because I think you're going to move on, and regrettably you're going to be moving on.
I'm moving on this summer.
We know that.
Yes.
But what if you could look back and say, you know what, I didn't get that.
Oh, I have a list of projects that keep me up at night, that I could provide immediate impact to warfighters that I cannot get across the line. Some because there's this thing called the multiple PAE problem. So if you have a technology, let's say you're building a next-gen cruise missile, you are going to talk to PAE fires, and they're your transition partner. But especially for some really exquisite software capabilities or for cross-cutting capabilities, you could be going to 2, 3, 4 different PAEs. And it creates this weirdness about none of them want to take ownership because they only do a part of what your capability can do. And we've got some projects like that where there's been a multiple PAE problem and I just can't get them across the finish line and it kills me. And then, Congress has been very kind to the Army. They gave us some flexibility on types of funding lines. I really want to see how that goes the next 18 to 24 months. Because the ability to get a little more flexibility and adjust in year of execution exactly how much of what I'm buying based on what I need and the condition in the world, I think is incredibly powerful and could really help unlock some of these low dollar value tranched buys that I was talking about earlier. So I'm excited to see like the next year or two, has what Congress given us done that? Or is there—
that in itself is probably an
experiment.
experiment.
There a little, right? Or is there a little bit more that we need? Or do we need to tweak this policy or tweak whatever?
Right.
So I'm really excited to see where that goes. But yeah, there's projects to keep you.
And so you mentioned the Department of War.
Yeah.
We talked about within the Department of War, this cross-cutting application and how difficult it is. What if you seen it going beyond Department of War?
So yes.
Look at the Navy nuke program, right?
Right.
The Department of Energy and the Department of War kind of work hand in hand.
So cross-service collaboration is a blessing and a curse. It's fantastic in that it opens up additional markets for companies. It's fantastic, once again, you think about reduced supply chains, easier maintenance if we're all using similar systems. But from my perspective, I can't strong arm the Marines or the Navy into taking any capability. I can only exert my influence on the Army. So we will always concentrate on that Army transition partner. That said, we're going to still try to connect you across the board. And if the Air Force takes it or the Navy takes it before we do, we're still quite happy. And that we still count that as a win. But for me, it's still more the it's like inter-PAE within a service.
Sure.
Cross-cutting, that's more of a challenge than joint. Joint we can figure out because one will always lead and one will follow.
Yeah.
At least in my experience.
What are you most excited about? Like, what is that singular thing that you said, man, that's my big win during your time here?
So
that you're most proud of.
That I'm most proud of.
And maybe not even you, it's just like the team itself.
So the thing that we've got going on that I'm most excited about is this project called Project Overwatch. We worked with X-Tech Search, Army X-Tech Search, ran a prize competition. 40 companies were selected from like 500 plus that applied. And we took them down to Rellis campus at Texas A&M, and we ran them through platoon sticks in groups with soldiers. And out of that, 20 companies were picked by the unit to embed with that unit for 18 months. And their collective training is starting at Fort Hood this month. So the brigade has like 5 or 6 capabilities, kind of cross-cutting, comms, planning. And then each of the battalions has between 2 and like 6 capabilities. And they're going through the whole collective training cycle with the unit. And at the end of it, we'll see what goes to NTC.
How do people check? I mean, that sounds like a reality show in itself. Like,
it's incredible.
Where's that Netflix series?
I wish. No,
I think that's great. Like, more needs to be talked about that process.
That model, right, which is like our engineer model on steroids.
Yeah.
We're about to start that again with a different unit for a different problem. Like that model, that level of access, I think is one of the things I'm most excited about. On a personal level, I also brought metrics to DoD innovation, which is like uber nerdy, but the scientist in me is incredibly proud of that.
I would say I love that you did that. You're very data driven.
Yes.
That's been the most consistent thing that I've seen is again, the spoiler alert,
And in your report,
the State of the Union, what's going on at AAL, but that's where it matters.
It is. Like AAL collects about 100 metrics per company. We don't publish them all. Some of them are internal.
Right.
But that's a level of data-drivenness that helps us identify like, oh, this company is crushing it. Oh, we might need to accelerate them. Oh, they need a senior leader visit versus just thinking like, oh, where's General Hodney going and do I have a company there?
I ask everybody on the podcast to pick their call sign. Normally, you don't get to pick your call sign.
I'm not creative like this.
It's okay.
You know what? I kind of have one. I just don't have it in a military professional context. I am a harpist. And I am on like 120 live studio recordings. I've been on recordings nominated for Grammy Awards. And inevitably, conductors don't know your name, but they know you're missing or need to be louder, and they just yell harp. And you respond. So now if I'm in like a crowded room and somebody says the word harp, I'm like, yes, you're looking for me. So that would be my call sign. It would be harp.
Are you on Spotify?
I believe I am, yes.
That's awesome.
When I lived in North Carolina, I recorded a really cool piece, modern music for saxophone and harp that they still play on North Carolina classical music radio.
Mission well done.
Thank you.
Having, when I first came out of retirement and the first director, Len, seeing him kind of shape this, actually my knowledge came very early on when I was working with Secretary McCarthy.
Yeah.
When we said, all right, we're setting up Army Futures Command and there's going to be this thing in a venture capital ecosystem. We don't know what we're going to call it, but that is today AAL.
It is.
And I can tell you, you've moved the needle.
Thank you.
So on behalf of me, just seeing the originality of the concept to where it is today, mission well accomplished.
Thank you.
You should be very proud of that. And I know that that's not going to stop either. Like the processes, you've definitely left something that's going to be compounded.
I am most proud of the team we built.
Yeah.
And I think the sign of any good leader is that you can leave and the organization continues to run. Len did that. Jay did that. And I'm hoping that's true when I leave this summer.
Yeah, it will be. It
really
will be.
excited for the next command team. They're going to crush it. And we're going to keep helping companies and keep moving the needles for soldiers.
Yeah, continue to do the storytelling because that's what brings more and more people back. So very excited that we get reshoot this podcast to really get it. And thank you for allowing us to. And we're going to get this message out.
Love it.
As fast as we can. And I think and I know when we look at an event like South by Southwest, it's this convergence of the global community, but it is a platform for us to talk about innovation at large.
Exactly.
And really what's going on here in the defense ecosystem.
Thank you so much for having me back. This has
thank
been
you very much.
incredibly fun.